Let's talk
That's my
about the
identity.
event business, particularly wedding planning. Setting the dates or picking the date and creating the guest list. From the point of the planner, how does this happen in consultation with the client? What are the things to consider when doing this?
All right, thank you for your question. Actually, a wedding date is important. Um, is the most important um, item. You cannot plan a wedding without having the date and the venue. So these two things are actually very, very important when it comes to planning a wedding. And there are factors to consider. We have two major elements that that determines the dates and also determines the kind of venue you eventually go for. And these two major elements are the event goals. What are your wedding goals? When we talk about wedding goals, we now talk about the priorities. What are your priorities? What are those fantasies that you had? Growing up, you've had fantasies. You probably attended some weddings as a teenager, as a young adult, before you are ready to have yours, and you have fantasies. What are those things? Those are the things that you look into before you say, okay, this venue suits into my plan, and this date would actually work for me. For instance, you've always fantasized regarding event. You want it to be an open air wedding, and by the time you are ready, you are choosing a June or a July date. It won't work because that is when the shower is, on the high side. So if your priority is, I want to have an open air wedding, so that means you have to get a hall. That means you have to look into dry season, for picking a date. So those are the things to look at. The second thing is your event guest types. Who are the people that you'll be having as a guest? What kind of family do you have? Who are your family members? Are they high profile? Are they the middle class, or are they the low class? What kind of venue suits the kind of family you have? If you also have a large family size, you can't be talking of an event of 50 people. You can't want to have an intimate event when you have a large family size. So those are the two major elements that constitute some other factors that I'll be talking about later, that helps you to make a final decision of the date, the time, and also the guest.
All right, Abimbola, glad you have you join us once again. Let's talk about choosing the right venue. In choosing the right venue for the wedding, what are the things you need to put into consideration? What are the factors you need to consider to ensure that you have a proper wedding? What are the facilities you need to ensure they're in place? I want you to give us tips on choosing the right venue, because this has always been a challenge for the couple or event planners. But what are the factors that you have to put in place to ensure all the resources, the materials, the infrastructure, or the equipment that you have to put in place to ensure that your venue is befitting for the event to come?
All right, thank you very much. So, like I said earlier, I'll go back to the fact that your fantasies, your priorities is the first thing. Now, if you want to have an open air wedding, you don't like to do the whole thing. There are some people like that that will work with. They don't just want that whole clumsiness and all of that. So they know they can't have it. Of course. So I've had to plan one. She insisted on June, July because that was the date the husband wanted. But we had to talk her into moving it, to the later date of the year. If that priority is, much more important. So when planning a wedding, the first thing to look out for in your venue, does this venue suit the current weather of the date I have chosen? Does it suit it? So now we have some halls that still have a form of open air, kind of. You can also look into that. Then the second thing is your budget. Like my colleague said, you have to be very, very truthful with your budget. Now you cannot have a budget of 1,000,000 naira, for instance, and you are looking at, oh, there's this hall in VI, 5,000,000 naira, and then by the time you go there, you fantasize, wasted time around the place, and then you can't still afford it. So the venue you can afford is also an important thing when it comes to choosing a venue. Now, the third is what are the amenities available in that venue? Do they have the toilets? Do they have water facilities? Do they have car parks? If, for instance, 50% of your guests will be coming in with their cars, you definitely need a large car park so that people will definitely be able to park their cars well. And if there's no large car park, do they have a front space that can be a makeshift for people to park their cars? So those are the things to look out for. Another thing is, what is the security level of this hall? We've had instances where we got I think this was over the news earlier in the year, where at different instances the hall caught fire. Do they have extinguishers, and can their workers actually operate those fire extinguishers when there's a hazard? For instance, there's a hall I had to decorate, and the tiles were all smooth, such that I was wearing flats. I barely fell down. Not to now talk of when people are on heels. So that kind of space is not too good when you have a guest coming in with heels and all of that. So of course that could be managed. We ended up logging and all of that. So those are the things to look out for: the security of the space, the level of safety, the ambience, how does it look? Does it have correct lighting for your pictures? So those are the things to look out for before you finally say, okay, this venue suits my wedding. Thank you.
All right, we're in a time where people do destination wedding. They move the wedding from one part of town to a different place, or even maybe to the sea. How does this now affect the planning of weddings? Does it pose a challenge in terms of decoration, fixing the venue, and even budgets? So destination weddings and the new trends we're having now in wedding venues, how does it impact the process?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So we all know destination weddings they are pricey, they are not cheap. So to start with, you should definitely be prepared for the budget for that. And for destination weddings, we usually advise to have your safety kit and your safety team, because you're going to a space that you're not familiar with. So you have to do extra for destination weddings, and you would have had your planning team, the vendors, everyone has to be carried along and prepared. Okay, so the first thing for destination wedding is the planner has to visit to ensure. So you do analysis of the environment, you do the risk analysis, you do the analysis of the needs. So by the time you come up with those analyses, then you will now know, okay, what are things to prevent, what are things to ensure, to make available, and all of that. So for destination weddings, there has to be a first analysis. We do that for other weddings, other events, but sometimes you're already used to some of those venues, so you might really not do a lot of analysis, because you've done it before for a particular venue, a particular location. You might not have to be doing it all over again. But for destination weddings, you have to do your needs analysis, your risk analysis. So it helps you to plan ahead for things to avoid, for things to bring on board. Okay, you want to have a sea wedding, for instance. You have to first get a marine engineer along when you want to go and do your analysis. So you need to go with professionals. So that's why I said it doesn't come cheap, but it's very, very achievable and possible.
All right, let's talk about creating a guest list now. What do you make of this funny development in this client, where no matter how you plan for your wedding, you still have guests uninvited? They will still find their way to the venue. Somehow, if I may use the word, they get crashed into the venue. Now, I would like you to share your experience with us, how you were able to manage this as an event planner, and what do you advise, couples who are planning for wedding to do in this light for uninvited guests who will usually get crashed into the event? How do you prepare for them?
All right, thank you very much. So, as you were speaking, it just came to my mind that in Yoruba we call them Obomoya. So they get crashed, and to some extent, we've been able to use technology to curb that to a very large extent. Now, event planners have embraced technology, to a large extent. And by the time you know that, okay, this event should be ticketed, it should be strictly by ID, just because your client doesn't want to have a loose list. What you do is make it an e-invite. So for an e-invite, so there are two ways that I've actually experienced. For an e-invite, you actually have a card, an invite card that permits one person that everybody has to come with. That's why we have bouncers now. Like my colleague said earlier, that the industry is large. We now have people reaching down to various, aspects. So we have bouncing companies, security companies that provide bouncers. So you would have briefed them, this and this and this is what is going to happen. So they can use those cards, aside normal ID, because we realize that IVs, paper IVs to be duplicated, people have their ways around that. So those e-cards serve as pass, when they want to come in. Another one that is just that is quite that's related is using the barcodes. So everybody have their barcodes on their phone, and that's what they use at entry level. So using all of this, it helps to curb the non-invited to a very large extent. It causes the non-invited guests a very large extent, and in the long run, you don't have too many crowds that you do not plan for. Actually, it might not be 100% because it might be that your family member will still come and say, "Oh, planner, this person is the younger sister of me." So, but then it really curb it. At least we've been able to curb it to like 95% using technology.
Ask you, what are the challenges you face in enforcing a guest list, for instance, strictly by invitation, when we do know that people around here may take offense at that, dressed up, get into a wedding venue, and you're told because you don't have your card, you can't get into the venue. But aside that, what other roles does a guest list perform? What does it help the planner to do?
All right, thank you very much. So the guest list is like the instrument for us to be able to have a proper figure to the guests we want to cater for. Now, people, before they meet planners, before the consultation, they just think over their head, my wedding should not be more than 200 guests. But by the time they sit down for consultation, and then I begin to ask, who are your friends? Where do you work? How many people will come from your office? You take that down. Your family, how many people are they? Who are your extended families? By the time you start creating those lists, one after the other, okay, the school you attended, would you be giving them an invite? How many representatives? By the time we now put it on pen and paper, they now begin to see that they can't have less than 500 if they really want to go by inviting all of those people. So at the point of consultation, they begin to see the real picture, the real figures, working with those numbers as professionals. So now, at the end of the day, by the time we come up with the guest list, they decide, do I want to go on with a regular large party, or I just want to maintain an intimate one that I just invite family members and two friends? They also, budget is everything. They come back to that. And by the time they decide, I have a list to work with. I know that, okay, the food vendor is bringing 200 guest food, and I will not be stranded. I have a list. Okay, if at the end of the day the guest list is 200, you plan for 250, because you have to plan for the extra, the extra one here and the extra one there. the vendors, some vendors here and some vendors there. So by the time you have that all planned, it helps you to curb the challenge of this venue is small. It helps you to curb the challenge of the food is not enough. It helps you to curb the challenge of the AC is not cooling enough, because you already know the capacity you're planning for. So a guest list is so important in helping you to have a unique, a beautiful experience altogether in the long run as a planner. So you really have to put it on pen and paper.
Now, let's look at the issue of security and protocol. What is the best approach to this? Because when it comes to event planning, that's very crucial. But what is the best approach to this? Do you outsource or you create your own unit to handle this kind of sensitive issues?
All right, thank you very much, sir. So we have two categories of security, and we have the ones that if it's an high-profile event, we are going to be having some invited guests, some special guests that are high-profile. You have to get security with guns. On the other hand, if it is a regular, just to avoid people get crashing and all of that, the bouncers are fine, the uniform guys are fine. So for me, I outsource security to get the best hands that are trained for that job. But if I want to say, okay, let me just recruit a set of guys, they might not have the tools, they might not have the physique, they might not have the look, they might not have the professionalism that is required for that task. So for me, I would say as a planner, it's better to just outsource, except you have that as a side service. Maybe you also have a security service that you run. Of course, you can engage your security service. But if you don't run a security service aside the planning service, then it's better you just engage a professional, so that in the long run, the work of the security service is broad. It's beyond invited guests with crashing alone. They help to also ensure that it reduces the level of theft reduces, the level of there's something we call bad boost reduces. You're having a challenge, somebody is being offended at a party, they handle that. So that there's a lot of things that they actually come in to help to avoid, which I feel is so important. And I would not want to just engage anyone that is not professional. So advise yourself. Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at the guest list. How does it help in the seating arrangements and even in the acknowledgement of guests? I've been at an event where some persons were offended because they weren't acknowledged. Obviously, the moderator didn't know that they were even in that event. So how does this come into play?
All right, so there's something we call guest list category. It's important that you categorize your guest list. So it also helps in the table tagging. So when you are categorizing your guest list, okay, you have families and those events, you have friends, you have dignitaries, you have this, you have that. By the time you have those categories, and then the tables are tagged in those categories, the ushers help to implement to ensure that persons' seats are the right place, and the persons that need to be acknowledged would have been informed ahead. The planner would have been informed, because the planner is like a partner in that wedding. So there should have been information that has been gone ahead that this category, they need to be actually acknowledged, or specially greeted kind of at the wedding. I understand what you're trying to say. So that has to be done. And by the time the planner is aware, that the list of those that need to be acknowledged should be presented to the NC, because that is the person's job to do the acknowledgement. So all that would have been done at the workflow level. My colleague spoke about vendors meeting. All this would have transpired during vendors meeting. So at the end of the day, the blame is not shifted to anyone, because everyone knows where they come in, the point where they come in, and what exactly they are executing. So for the guest list, once it has been drafted out, the table tags has been done. The ushers have the list. Okay, these people sit here, these people sit here. The MC have the list of these are the people to call. with their names, not just the title. It will be a flow that everybody will enjoy, and there won't be any complaint.
All right, let's go to the business side of it now. I'm going to ask you this funny question, but it's also going to be productive. How do you make money as an event planner? Because that's the question an average person or a prospective investor is looking at. If I go into this, what is the prospect for me? What is the need for me? How do I make money? Irrespective of the budgeting, the money for the clients and the challenges. So from your own experience, talk to us. How do you make money as an event planner?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So everyone is in business. Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yeah, clear. You're clear enough. Yes, I can.
All right. So everyone is in business to make money. So I like the question you just asked. So how to make money? Know your onions. The first thing is people won't pay if you are not professional enough. So you have to first get the training from a respectable training school. Know your onions. Gain experiences over time. And by the time you are very, very, by the time you are fully prepared, then you charge your bill. That's how to make money. You charge as an event planner. There are charges for planning fee. There are charges for coordination. There are charges for all these things. So you are not doing it for free. Just, okay, maybe as a non-professional, you didn't pay for, if you didn't go to training school, you might not know that you're supposed to charge it. So you're not doing it for free. So you're supposed to be paid as a planner. It's a service you're rendering. Planning takes 3 months, 6 months. So you can't employ my service for months and think that, I don't deserve to be paid. So, so we charge planning fee, and that depends on your level of experience, the level of the work. When you were brought on board, is it comprehensive planning? Did you just come in between, or were you just engaged a week just to ensure the coordination and all of that? So those are the things that determine how high your charge will be. And sometimes some people prefer to charge the percentages. So if, for instance, the planner brings all the vendors, and you can charge a percentage of all the vendors' services that they're bringing on board. Okay, this percentage is what I'll be charging my clients, and then they let the client know, okay, your budget for this wedding is so amount, and I'm going to be charging you so percentage. So there are different ways, to make money from it. But the first thing is you need to know your onions, you need to get professional, you need to get experience, expertise, and people will definitely pay you for the service.
Assume that the event planning business is enjoying lots of patronage. But what are those things that you still find missing that you think if they're in place, it will make business better for you as an event planner?
All right, thank you, Ma. So the thing that I feel would make business better, I would say, is support. Planning is tedious. Of course, every job is tedious, but support is highly important. And getting support from clients, because the truth is, your client support is very, very crucial. And sometimes the client just feels they can just go and play fast one on you. You would have done the job, and you would have gotten your vendors, you would have negotiated, and you just get, my sister's uncle's brother is bringing this particular vendor, and that is the job there. Meanwhile, you put in your energy, you put in your expertise to get in this vendor. So support from clients is very, very, it's going to help, to make the job easy for us planners. If you've decided that you want to use this planner, trust them. If you cannot trust them, then you shouldn't engage them in the first place. That's why I love the way my colleague about trusting your planner. If you cannot get a planner you can trust, or don't engage that planner at all. Because I can imagine you've done a lot of work, you've done a lot of background work. And the funny thing is, the planning work is not seen physically until the event. Do you understand? It's captured, then they see the result of the event. So people just, I can just remove shock from this person's leg in the midway, and they don't know that what they just did is actually, bringing down the person's morale to continue with that job. So support from clients is very important. Number two is support from government. Support from government. How how is Nigerian government encouraging the event planning sector, the event sector at large? What are the things? We have some form of support grants designated to, a lot of things happen in the sector of education and all of that. The entertainment and event goes another large sector that actually get more support. So all this support from all these areas actually help us to deliver better and be happy.